In that case,
I got it.
okay. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Apologies for the delay starting, a few technical issues, but hopefully we're all good to go now. Look, thank you for joining us today. The webinar you're joining us on is Apartments Go Solar and All Electric, hosted by City of Ryde. To everyone joining us online, either in Ryde or beyond Ryde, those here with me at the library, as we are live streaming at the library today, welcome. Before we get underway, first of all, I'd just like to show my respect to the Wallumattagal clan of the Darug people and to the elders past, present and emerging who are the traditional custodians of the land on which City of Ryde libraries stand. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of wherever you are joining us from today in Australia. Just very quickly, because I know we've lost a bit of time to start with, my name is Liz Pearce. I work for City of Ryde. My role is the Home Waste and Sustainability Advisor. In City of Ryde, we support all our residents to live more sustainably, and we do offer a free service for everyone to have a free home energy, water and waste audit and provide personalised efficiency advice. Over 60% of our residents aspire to having solar power, an electric vehicle, along with other energy efficiency measures in their home. However, we also recognise that over 53% of households are in apartments or other strata arrangements, and there can be an added layer of complexity to realising these aspirations when there is common property involved, body corporate approvals required, and so on. So to assist our strata residents and body corporate representatives and strata agents, who are hopefully all here today, find the pathway to achieving these goals and allaying fears and demystifying the process, we have invited Brent Clark from What Block here to speak to you today and answer any questions you may have. Brent is the CEO and founder of What Block. He has over 12 years experience assisting strata committees, strata managers, facility managers and the like in these areas. So please, without any further wait, please welcome Brent Clark. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Liz, and it's great to be here. So welcome to everyone. This is Apartments Go Solar and All Electric, and we've got a lot of ground to cover today. We'll be looking at electrification of strata buildings. We're looking at some of the precursor projects that the early adopters are having to navigate to electrify their apartment buildings and their strata buildings. We'll then cover some solar. We'll look at heat pumps for hot water and into EV charging. And there will be an opportunity to type some questions in to the chat and we'll have a look at those at the end. So there's quite a bit of content and we'll jump straight into it and get going. So on the slide that we've got here, we're looking at how do we complete the electrification of strata buildings. So all our apartment buildings have electricity connected today, but what are the technologies that would complete this? And most importantly is solar photovoltaic, but the other items, use of batteries, heat pumps for domestic hot water, either individual or shared plant, pool heat pumps, EV charging in car parking areas. And we'll also note that, you know, there are great technologies like reverse cycle air conditioning, which are the same technology as heat pumps for heating and cooling, space heating. So this is a picture of where we want to get all the apartments in the Ryde City Council area to eventually. Now, unfortunately, some of our strata meter boards look like this today, and there are some standards such as AS3000 wiring rules, and these older meter boards don't conform to all of those standards. They might still have ceramic fuses in the meter board. They may not have converted over to the more modern residual current devices. They'll have a mix of these older analog electricity meters that still have spinning discs in them, and some newer interval meters or smart meters with mobile phone connectivity for the meter readings. So a really big hurdle for some of our older building stock, and most of the strata buildings in Ryde, New South Wales and Australia are older strata buildings. The average strata building in Australia is still an 11 or 12 lot, red brick or white brick walk up. So this is most typical of what we've got in the older building stock. Now, the switchboard and meter board upgrade is what we would consider one of the precursor projects for a strata building to do prior to the rest of the electrification measures. And some of the benefits are it will reduce fire risk in strata buildings. It'll reduce electrocution risk. We'll be getting rid of some asbestos that's in these older meter boards. It'll be bringing you up to AS 3000 compliance. And once people get to smart meters in their individual apartments, they'll have access to time of use tariffs. If they've got individual electric hot water, this allows you to get to off-peak hot water, which a lot of our people in strata buildings don't have today. But also it prepares us for induction cooktops, electric vehicle charging, community solar sharing. And there are now some modern energy retailers that will give you smartphone apps if you have smart meters, and you can buy wholesale electricity rates, or even buy and sell and trade solar from your family members that might have a house and have excess solar coming off their house, etc., and also preparing for batteries. So one of the main things we'll just cover is those older electricity meters are typically owned by the grid provider, which is Ausgrid in the Ryde area. After you upgrade to a smart meter, the ownership model usually transitions to an energy retailer, the one that's servicing you, rather than it being owned by either the grid provider or by the strata or the owner's corporation. So here's a little example of a 10 apartment white brick walk up in Carlton, and they used to have a meter board like this, and they upgraded it to look like this, and that cost them about $18,000 for 10 apartments, including the smart meters. Now, there's another piece of equipment that's become very important in terms of preparing the building for electric vehicle charging, and that's installation of a service protection device. And most of our older strata apartment buildings are connected to the electricity grid all the time. Now, to try and become compliant with standard 61439, you need to install a service protection device. And this is like an on-off switch for all the electricity coming into the building. So you actually can completely turn off all the apartments and the common areas with the flick of a switch. And this will become more important over time as we prepare our buildings for, say, discharging batteries from our electric vehicles and selling that power back into the grid through a process called vehicle to grid. This is also important when it comes to feed-in from solar systems. So this is another item that we'd be encouraging strata buildings when they do their meter board and switchboard upgrade to also get a service protection device installed at the same time. Now, particularly when it comes to looking at electric vehicle charging, people always ask this question, oh, should we do a supply upgrade from the nearest substation? Now, it's incredibly rare for strata buildings to actually do this project. So try to avoid doing it if it's at all possible to avoid doing it. To give you an idea, an older apartment block might spend $100,000 adding 100 amps into the building to take it from 100 amps total up to 200 amps. And that's if you don't have the pain of digging up the street and running cables and relaying pedestrian walkways and bitumen on roads and things like that. all those civil works drive the price up enormously. This would just be if you've got a telegraph pole outside and you wanted to add 100 amps from the telegraph pole coming into the building. Now, the only thing that would drive you to do a supply upgrade is if you're actually suffering kettles or tripping circuits inside individual apartments. And the next challenge is it's not always possible to upgrade supply from the nearest substation on the street if that substation is full. And no strata building wants to incur the huge capital cost of installing their own substation if that's the next step that would be required to do a supply upgrade. People can't afford the real estate for the substation, let alone the substation itself. So trying to avoid capital works. So it's about trying to use what's in our buildings as efficiently as possible, particularly around electric vehicle charging. We'll come back and we'll talk about load management rather than looking for capacity upgrades or supply upgrades. So our next thing we're just going to have a look at, in Australia, we've got fantastic world-leading uptake of rooftop solar on residential houses. We're currently at 37% penetration. That is the highest per capita penetration of rooftop solar of any country across the planet by a long margin as well. However, when we look at our residential strata schemes, we only have about 3.3% penetration of solar onto strata buildings at the present time. But we will call out City of Ryde is above the average in Sydney, having 5% penetration of solar on apartment buildings, which if we look at the, say, the 13 most inner city local council areas, Ryde ranks at the top of the 13 that are closest to the city centre in terms of having a higher penetration of solar on strata buildings. Now, solar can be done on strata buildings a number of ways. You can do solar for an individual apartment. This is an example of balcony solar. Balcony solar is something that's taken off in Germany and other parts of Europe, but it's not actually approved here in the Ausgrid area or in Australia at this point in time. People can still do an individual solar system on a rooftop, provided that it goes to an inverter and follows all the correct procedures for doing a solar install on a rooftop. But the balcony solar model hasn't commenced in Australia yet, but it's something that might happen in coming years. What we do have in Australia is a local innovation for shared solar. So the Melbourne-based company founded back in about 2014 called Illume Energy has developed a world-leading solar sharing system which allows one solar system to be shared across a number of apartments. And we've got a picture here of two SolShare systems from Illume Energy and two inverters and a single solar system on a rooftop of a multi-tenant dwelling here in the Ryde area. So this is 25 kilowatts of solar sharing. Through these solar sharing systems, you can connect up to 15 units per solar sharing system. If you've got more than 15 units, you need to buy more of these sharing systems to cater for the number of apartments that you have in your multi-tenant dwelling. But this is Australian innovation, local innovation by Illume Energy, now being exported to the US and Europe. And it's been installed here for a number of years in the Ryde local council area. Then we can look at another method of doing solar on apartment buildings. This is a 30 kilowatt common area solar system on the Genesis building at 133 Bowden Street in Meadowbank. This was one of the earlier electrified strata buildings that was done at the time of development in the Ryde area. And if, for example, you look along the rest of the street at Bowden Street, there weren't any other apartment blocks which had solar. So the Genesis building was, setting the standard for putting these common area solar systems in place from the time of construction. And the number of new apartment buildings being built in Ryde with solar from day one is a key factor in driving up that solar penetration on strata buildings to 5% across the Ryde LGA. So we'll just have a little look at cost and payback. So first of all, to frame where we are at in solar on residential houses, so standalone houses, we've got this world-leading installed cost of $1 per watt for residential houses. And that's driving this huge uptake in Australia. That's the cheapest installed cost per watt of any country on the planet. And it's also the cheapest form of energy installed, which has ever been created in human history. So standalone rooftop house solar is an incredibly cheap method of creating power. However, on strata buildings, you'll have higher cost per watt, and this is typically driven by how high your strata building is, because you start to have more lifting costs, longer cable run costs to get power from the solar panels back down to the electrical rooms, which are typically at ground floor or basement level. And so as you move from low rise to medium rise to high rise, the cost per watt of installing solar increases up to maybe $1.42 for high-rise apartment buildings, compared with, say, $1 for standalone houses. But that pushes out the payback for strata schemes to typically 7 to 11 years, but solar panels last for 25 to 30 years. So it's still a great investment, even though you don't get the payback as quickly as a standalone house. Now, when it comes to batteries being installed in strata, here are some different brands of batteries which have now been installed into strata buildings in the Sydney area. So, for example, many people have heard of the Tesla Powerwalls. There's a third version of that coming this year, the Powerwall 3. Strata buildings don't necessarily need well-known brand names for batteries. The Alpha ESS batteries are made in South Australia for the virtual power plant project over there. They've been used in some strata buildings in Sydney. BYD is another electric vehicle car company that originally was a battery company, and BYD batteries have been put into strata buildings, and Sungrow. And we'll see a number of other battery brands being installed into strata buildings over the coming years. For a larger installation of batteries, this is a new development out in Schofields in Sydney. They've got 24 batteries installed in one room. They're actually dominoed 3 next to each other from day one. And we can imagine that in much bigger buildings, you will start to get things like a battery room over time that looks something like this battery room in a strata building. Just to give you an idea, here is a map of the Ryde local government area, and you can see at the moment we're aware of about 93 residential strata buildings that have solar installed. All the blue dots on this map are strata buildings within the Ryde local government area, and that map is available online for anyone that wants to look at it. Just Google electrify strata Ryde and you should be able to find this. Also, we're aware of about half a dozen strata buildings in the Ryde area that have EV charging installed. And some people may have heard of embedded electrical networks. A number of new buildings are constructed with embedded networks. They are a type of microgrid, and there's at least 37 of those in the Ryde local government area. And some people have started, there's one installing electricity monitoring devices into to look at the total load of all the apartments and the common areas in their apartment blocks, usually as a precursor project for doing EV charging. And there's a building in Gladesville that's gone ahead and done that as well. Okay, so in the first section of this webinar, we've had a look at solar photovoltaic and batteries, because basically that's the technology which I actually read yesterday has become the fastest installed technology in human history as well. And that's the technology that underpins the reason that you would move to electrification of a strata building. Now, most people think of, the solar on an apartment building, maybe powering things like lifts, car park lighting in underground car parks that's running during the day, maybe the pool filter if you've got a pool, etc. But a number of our apartment buildings are investigating moving to heat pumps for hot water. And we're going to go through that now. And just to give you an idea, heat pumps are taking off massively in Germany and in Europe. And to give you an idea, in Australia, there's a massive increase in the sale of heat pumps for heating hot water as well. To give you a little bit of an idea where it sits, it's actually neck and neck with the increase in the installation of batteries. And heat pumps are actually edging ahead of batteries in terms of their growth rate in Australia. So it's a technology that we're definitely going to see a lot more of. So don't worry, we are going to provide the slide pack here, so we won't go through all the detail today. But Ryde Council Sustainability team will send this out after the presentation to the people that register. But let's just get a couple of things in our mind in regards to hot water. So a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment might use 75 litres of hot water per day. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom might use 90 litres of hot water per day. If we've got gas heating up hot water, it's typically heating it to 65 degrees. If you've got a common hot water plant and it's circulated around the building, you lose about 10 degrees on every circulation around a building, and the gas hot water plant's reheating that for the next trip around the building. Tempering valves is something that stops people scalding themselves with water that's too hot inside an apartment building. There's also a modern technology called warm water hot water systems, which don't heat the water as high as gas, and they are paired with an ultraviolet filter to kill off things like Legionnaires disease.
They used to be good for, It's really...
So hot water heating actually can be the largest residential energy use. It actually can be higher than heating and cooling. Here's a graph from Ausgrid, where hot water can be 30%, 37% of your energy consumption. Heating and cooling could be 22%. So what is a heat pump, and are they common? So a heat pump is a machine that moves heat from one place to another, really simply. So examples of technology that use heat pumps are every fridge, every freezer, every reverse cycle air conditioner. So there are millions of these machines across Australia, and they were first described by Lord Kelvin. Kelvin's obviously an important scientific figure. So they've been around for a long period of time. But basically, heat pumps, in terms of heating water, are capturing another renewable resource, which is air temperature. And if you've got a refrigerant that's in a heat pump that might be a refrigerant that has, a boiling point that's negative 28 degrees, anytime the air temperature is hotter than that, the heat pump can actually suck that energy out of the air and use heat exchangers to move it into the water. And that's much more effective than heating water using any other method. You do use some electricity in this process. So if you combine it with solar, you get the cheapest hot water available on the planet. So the key thing to remember is that heat pumps are renewable energy in their own right because they're sucking temperature out of air. We've got an urban heat island in Sydney. They're sucking this temperature out of the air and moving it into the water. They use electricity to do that. So you can use a second type of renewable energy, which is local solar photovoltaic energy to power a heat pump, and you're using two types of renewable energy. So just to give you an idea, heat pumps come at different quality levels. An important metric is the coefficient of performance, and that compares the efficiency in terms of the amount of like real energy that we need from electricity versus the free energy that you're getting from the air. So a higher coefficient of performance, if you've got a heat pump that's a COP of 5 or a COP of 6, that's the best. And to give you an idea, a resistant electric hot water system that you might know of from a standalone house, that's got a coefficient of performance of 1. So a heat pump just operating without solar power that's got a COP of 5 or 6 is 5 or 6 times as efficient as one of those old electric storage hot water systems. So you're potentially getting, more than 80% of the energy for heating the water from the air temperature. Now, we will just point out there's a challenge for apartment buildings. In New South Wales, there's a gas distribution monopoly. It was, a part of a prior New South Wales state government privatisation program. So Gemina, which is a brand that you might have heard of, is actually now owned 60% by the State Grid of China and 40% by Singapore Power. And they manage the gas distribution network, and they Gemina own many of these hot water meters that might be for individual apartments inside our apartment buildings. And they manage the end-to-end gas distribution network all the way into owning those hot water meters that are in the apartments today. But if you move to air plus electric hot water heating, a number of strata buildings actually jump off the gas distribution network altogether and don't reuse those hot water meters. So why do we want heat pumps in apartment buildings? Less energy, lower bills, avoid the gas distribution monopoly, reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and reduce carbon emissions. Now, just a couple of other things to go through. The flag fall or the meter reading fees on the gas distribution network are in some cases quite high in our strata buildings. You might be paying $200 of your hot water bill for the entire year might be just for meter reading fees, not for the energy used to make hot water. Just to give you a little bit of context, if you have a heat pump system for, say, a block of 40 apartments, that might consume 92 kilowatt hours of electricity per day. And this gives you the relative daily plant running costs for a hot water plant servicing 40 apartments. If you've got electric heat pump with solar photovoltaic, maybe $15 per day for all the hot water into 40 apartments. And you can see there are many different models of hot water that we've got in apartment buildings, instantaneous gas storage, we've got electric storage, we've got metered and unmetered hot water. So some apartment blocks have been built with common hot water plants and no individual hot water meters. It's just like a utility service that's paid for via strata levies in some strata buildings, and that exists already today. And probably the trend is going to be towards more of that and less actual metering of the hot water going into each apartment. Because if you can drastically reduce the cost of hot water, it actually doesn't become as necessary to measure every liter of hot water that goes into an apartment. You can really, with the amounts that you can reduce it down to, there are some apartment buildings in Sydney where they've got large common area solar systems on the roof. They've got heat pumps for all the hot water, and a resident in an apartment might pay $180 for all their hot water for the entire year. Now, the challenge is some of the buildings that have actually degasified their hot water plant have had some issues decommissioning gas meters and deregistering individual lot hot water meters. You might be paid, you might have to pay, $1,100 or for a gas meter inside an apartment under a kitchen bench. Some people have been quoted over $2,000 for removing that gas meter if they don't need it anymore. You can deregister hot water meters. That's cheaper than actually removing them from the building. But there are some barriers for apartment buildings, and people are looking at breaking down these barriers and making it easier to transition off gas for hot water. Another thing that comes up in relation to heat pumps is the noise. Think of them as the same technology as air conditioners, so reverse cycle air conditioner, but you can do a little bit of research on the decibel scale, which is the key thing is don't make the mistake of adding the decibels together of if you're going to have multiple heat pumps in a system, you don't add the decibels of each of the heat pumps together. You use an online calculator to do it because it's a different scale that decibels is measured in. So 5 48 decibel heat pumps might only be 55 decibels in total. So you can also get mobile phone apps, which can estimate the noise level of heat pumps at certain distances, so you can work out how far they are away from apartments, etc. And then use a chart to compare what the noise of the heat pump is versus other familiar noises that we're familiar with. And remember, heat pumps don't run 24 hours a day, maybe 11 hours out of 24, depending on whether it's summer or winter. Now, it is possible to design heat pump systems that have multiple redundancy. Keep in mind, the average power outage is usually 3.6 hours. Some of these heat pumps, they actually have more hot water storage than older gas storage hot water systems. And so you actually might sail through an average power outage without an impact on residents in an apartment building. And the other thing to keep in mind, if you've got an existing gas hot water plant for an apartment building, quite often you need electricity to fire the gas boilers. So when you have an electricity outage, your hot water system goes offline, even if you're on gas. So, what you can do is you can always compare the risk of moving to a different hot water supply, heat pumps versus gas hot water. And we won't go into it, but you can look in your LGA and find out what the average power outage times are. So to give you an example, the first strata building that had the heat pumps and the solar was Regency Apartments at Epping. And they had heat pumps from day one, which were boosted by gas. Back in 2008, it was more common to have combination of heat pump and gas together. Now in 2024, the heat pumps have improved, and you wouldn't now design a heat pump system that has a gas backup. You would transition entirely to an electric heat pump only hot water system. Here's another case study. This is the Bridgeview building, 24 apartments. They shifted to common solar and heat pumps for all 24 units last year. And this created a property valuation uplift for their set of apartment buildings of probably created about $1.6 million of property valuation uplift across those 24 apartments. So what's the best time to think of upgrading a hot water heat pump? Don't wait until the existing gas hot water system cracks one of its storage tanks. By then it's too late. As a strata building, you need to go out and pick your heat pump supplier, get a design ready, and be ready to cut over. What will happen is if you leave it until one of these gas storage hot water tanks fails, you're under pressure just to replace it as fast as possible. And then you're pushing out, say, another 7 or 8 years before your apartment building has another opportunity to look at electrifying its hot water. And a couple of other tips. Remember, if your building's not on electronic voting, you need 21 days notice of a motion at an EGM. And if you've got a strata manager that needs some days to process this, really to put a motion for a heat pump up for voting at an EGM, you would need to get it to your strata manager about 30 days before the EGM. Obviously, if you've made the leap to electronic voting, then that you don't have that long time frame. It's possible to get the voting done quicker. This voting is always under a sustainability infrastructure motion, which is a special update to the New South Wales strata law, which has a 50% threshold, not a 75% threshold like a normal special resolution in strata. Now, let's just think about one other reason to maybe get an apartment building off gas. This is a building in Bondi called Eastgate. Workmen outside the building hit a gas main, 1,000 people evacuated. And this strata building responded by, they never wanted this to happen again. They disconnected gas from all the apartments, all the cooktops were upgraded, etc. So if you're looking for, this doesn't happen frequently, but there is a case here of it happening in Sydney. And the other thing to become familiar with is your gas conversion factors. This is a ratio that's on your hot water bill or your gas bill that shows you the ratio at which they convert the litres of hot water, which are measured, back into an estimated amount of gas, which was used to produce those litres of hot water within your apartment building. So remember, your bills are based on estimated amounts of gas in the current state of the art. They're not based upon actual usage of gas to create that hot water. It's just a formula that's applied in reverse based upon the hot water litres that flow into your apartment. Okay, so we've had a good chat about heat pumps for domestic hot water, which is the second section of going electric in your apartment building. And now we're going to move on to the third section, which is electric vehicles. So here we've got a couple of tipping points, and you can see that we're crossing through these tipping points for electric vehicles. The first tipping point was the running cost of vehicles. It's been cheaper to run electric vehicles since, compared to internal combustion engine vehicles since 2020. And the second tipping point we're coming into now is the price parity of actually buying the electric vehicles. There are now a significant number of electric vehicles. Even Tesla's sold over 100,000 electric vehicles in Australia now. But basically, one of the things that is attractive is if you can use solar power to fill the batteries of the electric vehicles and, get some of these really cheap prices per e-litre compared with what we're paying at the gas pump. If you run surveys in apartment buildings, you'll find, basically 80% of people are in favour of installing EV charging charge points into apartment buildings. There isn't great knowledge about the location of the nearest public charging stations. But something that I saw just in the last couple of weeks is that Google Maps is now integrated into their turn-by-turn navigation system how to get to public charge points. And that includes directions if you're in like open air car parks and trying to find what floor of the car park the EV charge point is in. So it looks like companies such as Google and prior to that PlugShare were trying to fill this problem of people not knowing where they could charge the electric vehicles. If you've got an end user agreement with your strata building, you can use an existing general power outlet that's connected to common house power for charging mobility devices, electric vehicles, or trickle charging motorbikes. So that is possible. You can even charge electric vehicles off these standard power points with a cable that's got a 3-prong adapter on the end. This is an example here of buying a $25 plug-in electricity meter from Bunnings and plugging that into a common area power outlet in the basement car park, in this case to charge that electric Kona, and that power point's just on that concrete wall there. And this measures the kilowatt hours that go into the battery of the car, and this person then multiplies that by the average electricity rate to reimburse the strata. Sometimes we have strata buildings where the individual car parking cages or might have a power point that's connected to the individual electricity meter. In that case, there's no need for cost reimbursement because this power point just comes off the individual townhouse electricity meter, even though it's located in the garage. We've seen a number of strata buildings, starting with the famous Horizon building, doing shared EV charge points in the visitor car parking area. In this particular example, they used a bollard system to manage it and a booking system for people to use it. That's the EV charger there on the pylon. And these people pay with credit card, and so they're not getting free charging of their electric vehicles. There are people that sometimes have their individual apartment meters located in a room in the basement car park. There are examples of people installing with Owners Corporation approval, charge point, and running the conduit back to a breaker that's connected to their private apartment meter. Over time, we'll get more of this cable tray installed along all the rows of car parking spaces in our underground basement car parks so that cables which are used for EV charging can run along those. This is an example of a house distribution board that's installed into different levels of the basement car park for the purpose of charging an electric vehicle. And you run via cable tray from this house distribution board. So one of the things to really make to sort of protect your apartment building in the best way from EV charging fires is to have dedicated distribution boards that are connected to the house power for charging of the electric vehicles, and they've got kill switches that are connected to the fire control panel. So if there's a fire for any reason in the building from any source, a message is sent just to stop all EV charging immediately in the basement car park, regardless of the source of the fire. And that can be done through having dedicated EV charging distribution boards in the car park area. Flat cable. This is another system that's an alternative to running cable trays through the basement car parks. Sometimes it can't be done if you don't have a flat wall or a flat roof, but basically you chop into this cable and install a charge point when it's needed. It's run the whole length of the car park. So there's some buildings like Rhodes House at Camperdown that have 9 of these installed, going past all the car spaces there, and some new developments such as 9 by Mirvac on the old Channel 9 site have this system installed from day one. Wi-Fi through the car parking areas is used for Wi-Fi connected charge points for 2 things: to collect billing information and also to manage load balancing. It can also be used for downloading software updates into the vehicles themselves, where you've got a Tesla or a BYD that gets over-the-air updates into the car. The car can get the updates through a house Wi-Fi system that covers and blankets the car parking area. And then once you've got Wi-Fi in the car park, some other uses, strata buildings are allowing mobile phone users to transition to Wi-Fi calls so they don't drop their calls as they drive down multiple levels of the basement car park and get to their car parking space. And some people are using more security cameras that use Wi-Fi after they put Wi-Fi into the car parking areas. New distribution boards that are installed into the car parking area could look like this. Now we'll just have a look at a couple of case studies of EV charging on a bigger scale in some different strata buildings across Sydney. So the Altair is a building over at Potts Point. They've enabled EV charging for 165 car spaces. They've got 6 new distribution boards, 1 on every level of the building. They've got dynamic load balancing system, Wi-Fi, and they've also got a method by which the owners corporation subsidises the last mile cable run costs. So they're always equal regardless of how far you are from the nearest distribution board. So here you see some cable tray. Here you see an EV charge point coming off that cable tray, conduit up to the cable tray, then the cable runs along that. Here's the load balancing system in the main electrical room. Another building is the Richmond building at Piermont. They've enabled 106 car spaces. They've put EV charge points in all 12 of their visitor car spaces. So they don't lose any visitor car parking spaces to EV charging. Just every visitor car parking space is enabled for EV charging. They've got 3 new distribution boards, cable trays, and load balancing installed as well. So there's Mark charging at one of the visitor car parking spots in the Richmond building. And here you can see new distribution boards on each of the 3 levels of the car park. And this is the new data connectivity box because they run data cables from the charge points to capture that billing information and also to manage the load management and, slowing down the speed of charging when there's any issue with not much spare capacity in the building. The Zinc building at Alexandria, it's a really great example. I'm actually interviewing Nathan Haig from the Strata Committee at an upcoming Climate Action Week webinar on the 13th of May. So you might want to register to have for that as well, to have a fireside chat with Nathan and understand how he electrified his building, common area solar, EV charging, flat cables, electricity monitoring devices, and now he's got a loom solar sharing for 45 apartments in that building as well. So let's just have a look about the Strata Committee archetypes that you might need in order to start getting these electrification projects across the line in your owners corporation. So there are 3 different types of people that it helps if you can recruit them onto your Strata Committee. One of these is the bean counter, perhaps someone who's got an accounting background or a financial background who can run the numbers and help with the rest of the committee understanding return on investment, payback, effective interest rates, to convert energy savings back into what they would be if they were an interest rate, etc. If you can recruit an engineer or a retired engineer onto your strata committee that's living in the building, then they'll be a fantastic resource for looking at the detail of quotations that you might get from multiple different vendors that are quoting these technologies for your building, and then explaining like the technical ins and outs of the different solutions, because you'll get slightly different solutions for solar, heat pumps, EV charging, and other electrification from different vendors. And then your sustainability champion. We used to call them the greenie, but now it's we call them the sustainability champion. And this is the person that's perhaps got the angle of reducing carbon emissions in the building, and they might be the person that's also behind coffee pod recycling and other types of e-waste recycling that you might have set up inside your apartment building as well. It's the combination of these three different archetypes on the strata committee which is the most successful. If you've only got one of them, it's very difficult for that person to bring everyone on the journey. So you at least want 2 out of 3 of these characters on your strata committee to try and be progressing this, and maybe creating a subcommittee, an energy subcommittee that can work on these projects. And all these projects in strata take at least 2 years to push through, because basically people have the idea at one AGM, they might go away. A subcommittee might be formed for a year, get all the quotes, and you're coming back at the next AGM to work on it. So always think it's an 18-month to 2-year horizon to do these electrification projects. We'll just mention that in 2021, the New South Wales government made going solar and all electric and all of these technologies we've spoken about easier to vote through in your strata building. They lowered the threshold for voting down to 50% threshold. And for anything that reduces energy consumption, reduces pollution, reduces waste, improves recovery or recycling, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, facilitates sustainable transport, and also the voting threshold's been lowered in New South Wales for taking out finance for any of those items above. So you have to take out if you want to take out a strata loan, a power purchase agreement, or some other financing method, the voting for that finance is also reduced down to a 50% threshold. So basically, ask your strata manager at the EGM or AGM to set up the voting based upon a sustainability infrastructure resolution, not based upon a special resolution for any of these projects. Now, we should mention property valuation uplift from energy features. Domain, one of the largest real estate sites, has been tracking this over a number of years up to 2022. They didn't update it for 2023, but basically this is houses and this is units. In any building which, for example, does the full electrification journey, if you're offering solar-powered EV charging in the basement car park, etc., when you're selling your apartment, the property valuation uplift per apartment is 12.7% on average, or $72,000 in capital value. So that's probably another important item for the bean counter to be introducing when they're doing the education of the strata committee members and the other owners on moving to go solar and all electric apartments, is we will start to get a divide, and this will become more pronounced over time between the electrified buildings, especially ones that have EV charging or solar-powered EV charging, versus those that don't offer any EV charging. And that will start to be reflected in the property prices of all the individual units. So here we are. We're back at the start again. Here's the slide that we started with. So this is what we're aiming to get to We're trying to get to an apartment building with solar photovoltaic, with batteries, heat pumps for hot water, reverse cycle air conditioning, EV charging. If you've got a pool and it's heated, also that should be heated by a heat pump, not via gas. So that gets us to the end of the formal part of the presentation. Just to let you know that on our YouTube channel, we've got over 100 other videos. If you want to go and look at more in-detailed videos on different aspects of heat pumps or EV charging or solar for apartment buildings. But yeah, I'll hand back to Liz, and we've got a little bit of time that we can take some questions.
Hi, thank you, Brent. A wealth of information for everyone, I'm sure. We do have a few questions which I'll run through, which we've held to the end, and also some here in person in the library, which I'll ask directly.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, just to confirm, David asked, will the recording be distributed after the meeting? Yes, we will send out the slide deck and the link to that recording as well. And I apologise if I don't pronounce names correctly, but Poissant, for solar sharing of one set of panels, do all units have to be with the same retailer?
No. So that's the beauty of that Illume solar sharing system that they've been developing since 2014 is everyone can still choose their own energy retailer. And this allows individual apartment dwellers, whether they're an owner occupier or a tenant, to still choose any of the, you can go and choose from 50 different retailers. And also people will, if they've got access to solar, they'll choose an electricity plan that meets their needs. So if someone's retired, working from home, student, studying from home, then it makes more sense to pick a plan that doesn't have as high a feed-in tariff, because you're going to be consuming more of that during the day. But someone who works in an office and is out of the building will pick a plan with the highest feed-in tariff, and that'll change your other rates for peak, shoulder, and off-peak. So that's the benefit of that model, is that it doesn't lock you into any energy retailers. It doesn't have the issues that were associated with the embedded networks.
Thanks, Brent. Ramsey has asked, our unit building wants to go to solar, trying to find companies to provide a quote. Do you have recommendations? The short answer from council's point of view, I'm sorry, Ramsey, is we can't align with any commercial interests. Brent, you might have some advice for finding a good company?
Yeah, I would probably Google top 40 solar installers for Strata and see what comes back.
Thanks, Brent. CS asks, is solar share the only current method for splitting the costs of usage for individual apartments? Are there any more equitable means of splitting out usage costs, as currently residents are on a pay-G basis, and I don't think anyone wants to subsidise heavier usage residents. Won't be fair to them.
Right.
That's the first question.
Yep. So the first, at the moment, the Illume Soul Share, which is, we're not in a council webinar, we wouldn't be promoting like one particular product if there was a competing product. And at the moment, there's no direct competitor product to the Illume Soul Share, either in Australia or globally. So that's for hardwiring the solar into the individual apartment meters. Over time, we will probably see some innovative energy retailers bringing out some models where you can share the benefit of solar, from locations inside or outside the apartment building to those inside the apartment building, just through bills and switching to a particular energy retailer. But then you're locked into that particular energy retailer.
Yeah. The next part of that question from CS, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name there. CS, also, does the insurance premiums go up with the adoption of solar panels, and what is the estimate increment?
So the solar panels don't drive up the insurance premiums, and the strata buildings that have installed it don't have to call out that they've actually got solar panels installed on the building. It's not something that's driving up the insurance premiums. The electric vehicle charging, unfortunately, is different. The electric vehicle charging is starting to reflect in increased insurance premiums, and that's because there's been a lot of talk about, the risk of lithium-ion battery fires. So some insurers have put in some mandates, like not more than 4 electric vehicles charging per floor of basement car park, or we won't insure the building. There have been, and so electric vehicles is definitely having an impact, and strata buildings are getting asked to disclose the number of electric vehicles as part of their insurance premium, but not the solar. So the solar, and it's a little bit early on the batteries, but the batteries can be installed like on an outside wall of the strata building. So it's not, and they're very small in terms of the amount of battery cells compared to one electric vehicle. So the batteries that have been installed in strata buildings might be 13 kilowatt hour batteries, and one electric vehicle might have a 100 kilowatt hour battery in it. So the batteries for solar haven't, started to impact the insurance premiums, but the electric vehicles definitely have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Brent. Just bear with me a moment. I'll just invite anyone here today who has any questions. Yeah. If I might have to share them with the group if you've got them there. Here you can feel free to have the stage for a moment.
Hi, my question is, I live in a villa, and each of the villas is like separate little houses but joined with a garage in between. If not everybody wanted to put solar on, and we needed to install smart meters as the first stage, are you able to do that, just upgrade certain meters, or would you have to do the whole meter board for a start?
Yeah, that depends on the age of your meter board. So there have been bunches of townhouses where the way to actually test that out is just to call your existing energy retailer right now and see if they'll put a smart meter on your existing meter board.
I know that Ausgrid has contacted one of the villa owners asking if they wanted to upgrade to a smart. They didn't end up doing it, but I was just so Ausgrid is the one that does that anyway. Is that right?
Actually, the channel now has moved to be your energy retailer as your first point of contact, and so whoever you're with, the first question is to go to them and say, "Can I get a smart meter upgraded?" And look, the crazy thing that we've seen in some strata buildings is, depending on the energy retailer, they may or may not install the smart meter onto the same meter board. So, there's an example where Amber Electric will install a smart meter because they've got a particular smart meter that's like a small footprint that can fit in, where maybe Power Shop or AGL or Origin won't install on that same meter board.
Mine's AGL, but okay. All right. And another question is about the heat pump. That's a bit further down the track, but if you're doing it individually, it's kind of like we're all individual little houses in one way. What sort of storage is required for that?
Look, it depends how many people you've got, but like if you're a family with 2 kids, like it'll be somewhere between 300 and 400 litre tank. So like for
like the old-fashioned ones.
They're actually a little bit bigger, but they stand a bit taller. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay, great. So unless anyone has any further questions online, I think
just
we've
asked-
come to the
Can you hear me? It's Russell
end of
here.
our list. Hi, Russell.
How are you? One quick question. We've got one EV vehicle in the building at the moment, charging her car through the GPO in the garage, her own garage downstairs. That GPO, I believe, from the electrician we've had a look at it, is wired to the light circuit rather than the power circuit. Does that create us a problem? And particularly with your Brent, the charger from Bunnings, the little meter from Bunnings you can get, if we could plug that into her power point, because she's at the moment getting free fuel, obviously. But is it dangerous, of course, that it's connected, the power in that GPO is connected to the light circuit rather than the power circuit?
Yeah. So, like, what will typically happen if you've got, and the electrician can tell you if it's usually a 20 amp lighting circuit. Typically you can do one electric vehicle on that circuit and the lights will be on. If you do two electric vehicles at the same time on that circuit, it'll just trip the circuit. So if there's another, basically what you could do is get your electrician to map out the lighting circuits that are in the car park area. And, basically it's a short-term solution. As soon as you've got two people that want to charge on the same lighting circuit, you won't be able to do it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's dangerous, yes?
Look, it'll trip the circuit, but it's not dangerous from the perspective of creating a fire in the building.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Russell.
Thanks.
Any further questions from anyone? No? I think that might be it, Brent, as far as questions go. So if there's nothing further, look, I will, as we've said before, we'll send out the slide deck and the link to the YouTube, so you can refer to that again. That will come with my details. So if you're in City of Ryde, you're welcome to contact me, and in particular, I invite you to participate in our Home Waste and Sustainability Advisory Service for some personal advice on your home around energy efficiency and also waste and water saving. And also, if you needed any clarification about any of the information or any further questions about today. But otherwise, thank you, Brent, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Liz, and thanks to City of Ryde for sponsoring this session today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.